Let's talk about the current energies. I'm going to talk about the tension that we're all feeling, the transformation that is underway, and hopefully we'll see that we're actually under some strong alchemical process right now. Hopefully we'll find a way to connect with hope by looking at the actual energies of transformation right now through a few lenses and how we can continue to stay in that positive frequency so that we can make it through. I mean, we're going to make it through. So let's just get into that positive side of it. So the way that this episode is going to run is I'm going to talk first of all about the current energies, and then I'm going to then break those down in a couple of different ways. This is 2026, and we're at the beginning of the year of 2026. There's a lot of stuff happening in the world. There is a lot of devastation. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of violence. And that really makes a lot of sense if you look at this cosmic cycle that we are in. We're actually winding down a cosmic cycle that has been underway for hundreds of years. I'm speaking to the shift that is recognized in human design. In human design, we understand that in 2027, it's actually going to be in February of 2027, the background frequency is going to be shifting. We're moving from the cross of planning to the cross of sleeping phoenix. And those names may mean something to you, or maybe they don't. Here's the long and the short of it. What we are in and what we're wrapping up is the energy of tribalism. Now, here's the thing. There is light and shadow to absolutely everything, every frequency that is available, right? So the tribalist energy that we have been operating on for more than 200 years, this is an energy that can be, think of tribalism can be very positive. It can be about we take care of one another. We recognize who the individuals in the tribe are, and that we can work together to make that collective security, almost like a large family, a large extended family. There can be really positive aspects to the tribe. And, a lot of people in the spiritual space, they'll be like, hi, my tribe. Oh, the so-and-so tribe, whatever your name is, like the Tricia tribe. I would never say that. I don't care for that. but anyway, there's a lot of positive, there's a lot of light that we have and we can still experience with the background frequency that is more like tribalism. Now, the shadow side of tribalism is hierarchical, meaning there is a leader of the tribe, and also the sense of, and not just a leader of the tribe, but that there's a breakdown. There's a leader, and there are different tiers of authority, and a lot of that authority is external to us. And then also, the tribal paradigm can be really positive, and that we're working together within our extended family. However, it can also erase the individual because it can be sacrifice yourself for the hierarchy, for the greater good, and you don't get your sovereign experience and voice. That is, I think, pretty clear the tension that we're seeing, whether it's in your personal life or it's in the extended world. It's like when we're wrapping up a certain background frequency, we're going to see the last bits of it fighting back. That's just simply how things are. Now, I'm going to talk more about that in another section here. And I'm going to move on to the next piece that if you're paying the attention to this in January of 2026, and also this is speaking to all beginnings of the year. I have air quotes going on with I'm saying beginnings of the year. It is unnatural to call this the beginning of the year. If we look to calendars that are more organic, so we're using the Gregorian calendar by calling January 1st the beginning of the year. And I'm going to explain what that Gregorian calendar is all about. Why is it even called the Gregorian calendar? Spoiler alert, Gregory was a pope, and he insisted, more or less, that regime insisted that the world adopt this. I'm in the northern hemisphere, and so at this time of year, it's cold. In the southern hemisphere, that's the opposite schedule. They're in the summertime. So pardon me for speaking mostly from the northern hemispheric perspective. But in this time of year, we have a tendency to feel this pressure of resolutions, brand new beginnings. And you know what? January 1st is cold and dark, and the earth is collected to herself, and she is resting. So with the human design perspective of 2027 shift, that's coming from the cosmic lens, the heavens. And I'm speaking also of the earth. And we are earth. We are both the cosmos and the earth. And isn't the earth also obviously the cosmos? Well, speaking more in the microscopic lens of the earth, you are earth, you are nature, and so am I. And the earth is in a quiet space. She's contemplative. She's collecting her resources and she's going within. There are other calendars that are more organic. In my ancestry, I use the pagan calendar. And the pagan calendar, the pagan celebration of Sabbats and lunar ceremonies, and all of the pagan spirituality is a completely open system. So if you want to learn more about that, then you can check out what else is coming up right here. So I'll break that down a little bit, but there's no surprise that we bust through, we make resolutions, they don't work, and it just doesn't even feel right. They don't seem to have meaning because it isn't meaningful to say this is the beginning of the year. I'm going to break down why these artificial calendars kind of put this pressure on us. Well, these are really only one artificial calendar. There are, besides this culture of paganism, which I'm going to speak to specifically, there are other organic calendars that make a lot more sense for the human being. And I'm not coming from the lens of it being like conspiracy. I mean, no, not in a, maybe a little bit, maybe in how the Gregorian calendar was administered for tax purposes, and maybe there was something to taking advantage of people's emotional vulnerability when they're actually most physically vulnerable during the wintertime, especially in times when we were much more directly dependent on nature. I think maybe, yes, there is some of that, but I'm generally looking at it as our lower nature collectively is also choosing that. I mean, that's what we're looking at. Now, I'm also not saying throw out the calendar, don't change your checkbook and, preach to other people. That's also not my way. But there is a good reason why your body is not ready to make brand new resolutions, why you feel a little less motivated and a little more insular at this time of year. And there are pagan festivals that speak to that. There are many other festivals and other cultural calendars and other organic calendars that also speak to that. So with the 2027 shift of going from the cross of planning to the cross of the sleeping phoenix, moving from the tribalism, by the way, to the individualism. Individualism obviously can have its light and shadow as well. As on the light side of it, if we're working from individual sovereignty, I understand myself, I know myself, I celebrate myself, and I contribute my authentic self to the collective and say, this is what I am here to do. And because I have made that of such great importance to me, to myself, my sovereignty, I want that from you as well. I hold space for you. I listen to you and your sovereignty and your individuality. Obviously, there's a shadow side to individuality, which is selfishness. But right now we are in this pressure cooker of wrapping up a lot of the shadow that we still want to learn from as we're moving to the new background frequency, the shadow of tribalism, and feeling the light of individuality. Now, I'm going to break all of that down to the 2027 shift, so you might want to stay tuned for that. And the last thing that I'll just say about that is that whatever sense that you're feeling, whether you're watching the news and seeing what's going on or not, whether you're feeling motivated a little bit, maybe not all the way, and whether you want to take a little time to journal a lot more, to meditate a lot more, and to actually let things just percolate and more like the seed that is frozen in the ground, that's all incredibly organic, perfectly organic. The stars and the earth are supporting you in all of this. Oh, and by the way, if you want to learn more about that pagan wheel of the year, including different lunar ceremonies, the ones that are upcoming for this year, what kind of moon energies there are, how you can have ritual or sacred time around the different high holidays or the Sabbats that are earth magic, you can check in the description here. I made a really cool guide of the Sabbats and Esbats for 2026, including all of their energies and the times, and I hope you enjoy it. There is a cosmic shift underfoot, a major cosmological change, We are actually at the end of a big cycle and entering a new cycle. This is something that is revealed in human design, a change of our background frequency that we've been in for over a couple hundred years. Now, I want to say that we all can get a little excited about things like this, and we're like, oh, major shift, and we, get a little Armageddon-y. And I actually came up in the Christian church, and I actually had a real ick factor about all of that end time stuff. It felt to me that it was like either a way to feel like you were going to get vengeance, or a way to feel like you were going to be rescued, or just a way to frighten people. It all felt very fear porn like. So I actually don't leap to the bandwagon of saying like this major shift is occurring, just so you know. Second of all, but there are major shifts that occur, right? Aren't there major events that happen in your life? And there are major events that happen in the world. The thing about this 2027 shift is that while it is a significant shift, it's not like a boom bang overnight. The world's going to be totally different. In fact, the evidence of the shift happening has been going on, well, you could definitely say by decades, but it's like that sense that people are feeling that time is speeding up. Raise your hand if you feel like time is speeding up. That's one of the, shall we say, symptoms or the evidence of this major shift going from 26 to 27. I think it's going to feel even more expedited in its pace of how time is speeding up. But I mean, it's funny to say that, but that's what it feels like. We also see a lot of unrest, a lot of things that seem to be breaking, systems breaking, and that is a major aspect of the change that we are in. Going from in human design, it's called the cross of planning, which is a tribal energy, to the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which is more of an individual energy. I like to think of it as a personally sovereign energy. There's light and shadow to either tribalism or individualism. We understand that. As this is wrapping up, it seems that we are really understanding the shadow a little bit more, because our shadow, our collective shadow and our individual shadow, is holding hidden gold. And so we have to understand and alchemize. It's like the heat of the alchemical flame has been turned up, because we want to really understand and utilize everything that we have, why we put it in the shadow in the first place. Now, what also is underway here is that systems have to break. And the cross of planning was, it impacted a lot. It created a lot of systems, hierarchies, external authorities. That's what a hierarchy. So by the way, there's a difference between an architecture and a hierarchy. For example, in universal architecture, there's source energy or God or divine, and then it is, maybe the realm of light. Maybe you see that as angels and other interdimensionals and oversouls and the galactic oversoul complex, and then the higher selves, and then the dispatch into the planets, and now we have the personal selves. That is an architecture, but it is not a hierarchy. And even if it were, it would be the other way around, even though the person walking on the planet, the avatar of the person walking on the planet, feels most vulnerable, the most in the dark, as we pass through this illusion, this veil of illusion and forgetfulness. If anything, which there isn't a hierarchy, but if there were a hierarchy, it would be more like between parent and child. If you're a parent, or if you can even relate to the concept of being a parent, if you were a perfect parent, wouldn't you guide and protect your child, yet revere your child? Wouldn't you say my child is more important than I? But see, it's not really possible, because the child needs you to survive. And so then you are actually more in a yin-yang kind of way, balancing one another. But if there were anything more important, it would be source, it would be divine, it would be God, it would be the angels prostrating themselves to you and saying, you are the most important. You are the brave one. You're the one who's vulnerable out there with your forgetfulness, walking the plane. And anyway, architecture, in the sense that this came before this, and this begat this, and begat this, does not mean that it is a hierarchy. Hierarchy is the implication that God is more important, that the angels are more powerful and important, and so on and so forth down the line. And that actually is what the cross of planning was supporting, the old background frequency. Well, we're still in it, but it's old in the sense it's about to expire. And if you've ever heard of this when people say, oh, traditional way, and sometimes I think people they just think that means like, just it's like general, like, oh, just that, it's like the way things were in the 50s or something. But there's a specific definition or meaning of what traditional is. Tradition, it speaks to God is the head, God is the head of man, and then man is the head of the woman, and then children fall underneath that. It is very hierarchical to say traditional. Now, modern is what we have been segueing into for a very long time, and modernism is not about that traditionalism, where there is very strict authoritative hierarchy in this plane. So the cross of planning, that's just speaking to something like the nuclear family, but the cross of planning and the hierarchy and the external authority, we also have, the ways that governments run. We have also just the socioeconomic structures and the way that we feel shame if we are lower in a hierarchy. It has been getting better, though. I mean, if we look back to other systems that within this, like the caste systems, or even systems that allowed slavery to exist. And of course, we can still see the shadows of those systems and the remnants of it. But if we look at it clearly, those things have been dying off. And now we are left with the last dregs of it. Now, on the interesting note of what I can see in the collective energy, with us moving to across a background frequency that is sovereign individualism, something I noticed that happened during the pandemic, or really it was through and after the pandemic, where we all had to shut down, go home, and people were no longer able to go to work, go to their offices, go to whatever their hierarchical, their assigned, tribal-like kinds of jobs were. You know what I mean? Like, do this for the company, in the way that you'd say, do this for the tribe. Now, the other thing about tribalism, by the way, is us against them, our tribe against that tribe. And we can see that with maybe the dust up of the racial lines that we want to break through. We see that in I'm American, as you can hear by my accent, in the United States, the purging of racism, or at least the confrontation of racism. It's painful. It is painful, but the pain has been going on. And the violence of breaking these things down, we can't look away from them. We can't escape them. We can't. It's just what is. It's what we are breaking down. So even though it is painful to break down these systems, it is a symptom of a positive change. Anyway, I was saying, like, during the pandemic, since everybody had to go home, and then when the shutdown was lifted, people didn't want to go back to work. They were like, yeah, while I was home, I realized that I absolutely hate my job, and I want to do something that is more authentic to myself. They called it the big quit, or the big resignation. People were just quitting and resigning because they just couldn't. They're like, I don't know what to do, but I can't do that anymore. Sovereign individualism. And it helps us as we recognize that if I can hold my sovereign individualism and treasure it and need it, require it, then I can hold space for someone else to have theirs, and then we can collaborate. You see, sovereign individuality, it fosters collaboration. And what Richard Rudd, I learned the word from Richard Rudd, as opposed to hierarchy, synarchy. And synarchy, SYN, is the resonance field of collaboration. And you know what? That's how health works. That's how nature works. All the cells of your body, when they are in coherence, they are in a synarchical agreement of collaboration, and well-being is springing and overflowing. That's where we are right now in this shift. Now, as I started this segment, I said I'm not a big proponent of, watch out, the times are a-changing, end times. What were they saying about 5 or 8 years ago? They were using some word like something that had to do with the word shift, you know what I mean? Like a big shift. And I think there's a reason why that feels like something that we either crave or, I mean, there are big changes that are always imminent, right? Whether individually or collectively. When this shift occurs, I think we will, especially those who are awakened or in their awakening path, you're going to feel and see in your own life how that has really occurred. Like the shift has happened. That's my read of it. It is, however, going to take a long time for it to have a significant impact because if you're walking an awakened path, that's great. But there are other people on the planet who are not, and they are not here to walk that. That's just, they're not here to do that. And we collaborating together means we're only going to, be able to move forward as much as we would. And anyway, growth is more sustainable when it is in a certain pace. There are big shifts, but moreover, there is a slow and gradual contemplative kind of shift that occurs. It's good news if you are walking the path of ascension and awakening because you can harness the energies of it. So let me just say a few specific things about the cross of planning emphasized systems and agreements and the sense of promising something from the sense of wanting to follow an external authority rather than from the personal sovereignty, the personal individualism. The sleeping phoenix is more about embodiment and that piece of sovereignty, your native land and the dispatch from your oversoul through that higher self with the gifts that are yours to express. The word desire actually in its etymology means from the stars. So your desires are not just yours. They are directives from the cosmos. And that's what the sleeping phoenix is more supporting and allowing us, holding space for us to grow in this way. So starting in 2027, the sleeping phoenix will become the background frequency. And now, in case anybody's like, what do you mean by background frequency? Well, just imagine if you were painting a picture, some art. If you had a canvas that was light blue or beige or red, it would really shift what you could put on it and how you would express. But maybe even a better, in case you're not visual, but you're more auditory, and frequency really aligns with auditory expression. If you had a song and you had a certain tone or the tonic of the key of the song, it's going to express in that key. And maybe it can kind of like play against the key, play against the bass tone of of what the creation will be. But that's basically what it is. Another way you can think about it is if you were working a solution, meaning a liquid solution, maybe you were making a potion. If you were making a potion or some kind of medicinal solution, you would start with something as the base, whether it's water or oil. If you were making a potion that had an oil base to it, what we call the carrier oil has an implication as to how it will hold or carry the elements that are put into it to collaborate. So that's the significance here. It's the powerful underpinnings that we are operating from. So as the sleeping phoenix is this change of the background frequency, the new paradigm is emphasizing that personal leadership or leadership from the inside out, self-sourced energy, emotional clarity, and creative autonomy, and specifically freedom, moving from victimization to freedom. Because if you are in human design or gene keys in your experiment or your contemplation with either one of those, it is relating to the gate or the gene key, the archetype in the I Ching of 55. And 55 is so beautiful. The shadow of gate 55 or gene key 55, I'm actually speaking more in gene keys, so I should say that in that relevance there. The shadow of gene key 55 is victimization. The gift of gene key 55 is freedom. And the city, which means the divine gift, is also freedom. And it is the only one of all of the 64 archetypes that has the same label, if you will, for the gift and the higher divine gift, the city, as the same label of freedom. It's the only one that has its freedom and freedom for those. Other ones, they have, like, for example, Gene Key 19, the shadow is codependence, the gift is sensitivity, and the city is sacrifice. And the sacrifice is meaning like interdependence and coming together in a collective, not necessarily like martyrdom, but at any rate, freedom. And isn't that what we're all here learning as we cross that veil of forgetfulness, as we move into the illusion? How can I feel free from my own personal sovereignty? Because I've forgotten that I have this greater life, this greater aspect of myself that is actually in spirit, that is absolutely free. I can learn about that freedom by being able to focus my energy into this life on the plane. That's what we are moving into. And then we are already there. You've already received the mutation if you're walking your path of ascension and awakening. Now, I will say also that I have a workshop on this that's actually in Modern Mystic Life. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, you can check out the link in the description and you can find a link to join Modern Mystic, which is an amazing portal with esoteric workshops. It's over 50 and meditations. There are monthly esoteric workshops and meditations that I'm holding live. Now, in addition to that, for a limited amount of time, I'm also going to be running the Sabbats and Esbats through the Modern Mystic Life. I say a limited time because I'm probably not advertising it anywhere else. So if you want to join the Wheel of the Year ceremonies, whether it is coming to the Imbolc or coming to the Ostara, or if you want to join the lunar ceremonies for new moon, full moon, and their particular expressions at that time, this is a great time to join Modern Mystic. So I hope to see you there. And I hope that you are walking your path of ascension and recognizing that this is a time of powerful alchemical strength. And we're all in it together. The light is busting through, even if there is really highly present the shadow in our society and maybe even in your personal life. We're getting into a really beautiful time of freedom and hope. Paganism is on the rise. I don't know if you know about this. People who actually identify as practicing paganism is exponentially growing. And those are only the people that are actually aware of it, or I don't know how they actually found they were doing surveys or something. The only people that showed up for the surveys. So you can imagine the people who are really connecting with earth magic, which is what paganism is all about. The word pagan actually means country dweller. It kind of became this pejorative meaning that, the church and different kinds of religious dogma started to associate paganism with meaning like you're a devil worshiper or you're evil or you're an evil witch. And by the way, witchcraft is also on the rise, and people understanding that being a witch or using the craft is about manifesting, positively manifesting, and that you actually, if you were to use dark magic, you would hurt yourself anyway. So being a pagan or being a witch is all about being natural and spiritual in the most powerful way. So paganism as the earth magic practice is on the rise. I love it so much because it is directly correlated to my ancestry, and also because while it is ancient, it is also has very it just has beautiful modern implications, applications. Paganism has the celebrations that help to mark the wheel of the year, of the turning, the natural turning of life. And it is related to nature and our organic life and way of being. And it is also related to the cosmos and the stars. So what's so beautiful about it is that it is something that was generated by just human beings who were looking to the skies and looking to the earth as a way to manifest and as a way to thrive and be connected to abundance, as opposed to the Gregorian calendar, which we globally follow, which was instituted by a religious figure. And I'll talk about that in another segment here. But paganism is about the familiar, it's about the ancestral, it's about what is seasonally relevant. Because paganism was, as the name, as I said, pagan means country dweller. This was a time when this system or this paradigm of spiritual practice, we had to be much more directly in contact with the earth because we depended on the earth to give us our sustenance. I mean, we still do, but we have so many barriers between it. But we have not evolved physically very much. You know, it takes our bodies a much longer time to evolve than it does in our culture or in our society or in the way that we are behaving. You know, we all have, not we all, but many of us are having back and neck issues because we're on the phone like this or we're on the computer and we're hunched over when our bodies still are in the evolutionary stage of needing to uh, run and maybe uh, throw a spear or stand up straight, or maybe to squat so that we can pull the fruit from the earth. And it really, this hunched over thing with the computer and the phone is not natural. It's not what our structure is made for. At any rate, this pagan wheel of the year is so beautiful. And each of the celebrations, there are 8 celebrations in the pagan wheel of the year. And then there are the Esbats. So those, the celebrations, the major ones or the high ones are called Sabbats, Sabbats. And the, you might say, minor ones are called Esbats, Esbat. And those are the new moon and full moon celebrations. Much more authentic and organic to our nature. For example, this is January, it's like the last week of January in 2026. And we are between, the last Sabbat was Yule, which occurs at the winter solstice. And we're about to approach Imbolc. It's spelled Imbolc. And Imbolc, it happens on, it's either February 1st or 2nd, just depending, on where you are and also where it lands that year in relation to the Gregorian calendar. This year it's going to be on the 1st for where I am. And you can celebrate it a few days before or a few days after. Either way, you're in the frequency band of it. So it isn't rigid in that way either. But Imbolc is actually about beginning to feel the stirring of the light coming back. Now, that's more of a new beginning energy when really, like Ostara, which happens 6 weeks after Imbolc, which is what Easter actually took its name off of. Ostara is the springtime energy, and that's happening in March. But Imbolc is like the midway point between Yule and Ostara. So Yule being the celebration of when we're going from our darkest day to where the light begins to return. But you see, the weeks that follow that are the coldest in the Northern Hemisphere once again. So then Imbolc, we're moving a little bit further down the line. And of course, it has to do with wherever you live. I live in Southern California. So really, we kind of moved past our winter. But I have a friend who lives in Michigan, and she's like, it's so cold. But maybe by the time in about a week, it's going to start to melt a little bit. At any rate, the point is, these are much more natural and organic for how nature is stirring. And our bodies, we are nature. We are not just in nature or walking on nature. We are nature. So our bodies are attuned to that. Imbolc being more about new beginnings and the light really starting to show itself to us, it having the sense of the seed might start to germinate a little bit. There's hope. And that is a full month away from the January 1st Gregorian date that says New Year, resolutions, when it's very cold and very dark. And there isn't really an organic reason to feel like you're springing as you would in the spring. And Imbolc is the precursor to spring. So I love the pagan calendar of the year. It's called the Wheel of the Year. We do ceremonies with it. We do rituals with candle magic, herbal magic, and a crystal magic. And these are all, these correspondences that are connecting us to the earth and amplifying the intentions and the spells, where we actually are using our voice to bring our intentions out from our heart out into the true field of manifestation by the vibration of our voice. That's what spells are all about. And Imbolc is still not about that big, oh, New Year's resolutions, I'm supposed to be active now. It's actually still not even about that, because we're not even totally in spring. We're just starting to get nearer spring, moving more into the light. Even if it's really cold where you are, like my friend in Michigan, there are longer days, and that is a benefit that we would all reap. So Imbolc is actually, it's not about action, it's about readiness. And to mark that time of readiness so that you can actually, when the light has returned and the sun's warmth is available at the time of Ostara, that is much more organic. That is true. That is how you can cooperate with the earth, the sun, and the cosmos. So think about it this way. The Sabbats, the 8 festivals, and people also will call the Wheel of the Year the Witch's calendar. The 8 festivals are like our relationship to the earth and the sun, and how we are between these two major aspects. And then the Esbats, these are our relationship to the moon, our intuition, and our emotions. And I think that's why people are really embracing lunar ceremony more than ever, going to sound baths or a moon circle. And by the way, I am running those Esbats, the lunar ceremonies, through the Modern Mystic portal, the Modern Mystic Life portal, which you can find in the description how to become a part of that, with all of the past workshops and meditations, a whole catalog of that, and then also the upcoming esoteric workshops and also the celebrations that we have with rituals. And I call the lunar celebration portal, we call that the certified lunatic portal. So, and we have a sweatshirt for it and everything. So if you want to become a part of that, whether you want to be actively a part of the community, which is so beautiful and highly resonant, or be a passive part of it by participating in, basically having this really low cost catalog of meditations and amazing spiritual teaching and content and ceremonies, channeling and everything. It's just the best deal out there, in my opinion. And if this had been around when I was like earlier in my spiritual awakening, when I was just consuming content, I mean, I still am, but I just remember I was like listening to Hay House Radio or trying to find podcasts, but it was like 12 years ago. So I either didn't know where to find it or it didn't exist as much as it does now. That's a part of my contribution, is to give this beautiful space for us to come together and live as mystics, but in the modern world. And so I'll just wrap up this section about the Pagan Wheel of the Year, or the Witch's Calendar, as some people call it, as it is the spiral of becoming. It is an open practice. It does not have to be aligned with your actual ancestry. That's what I mean by an open practice. Anyone is invited. If you are in the Southern Hemisphere, you might actually see the calendar in its opposite way, because it is something that was created, if you will, in the Northern Hemisphere. So Imbolc and like Yule is about the winter solstice, when in December you are having your summer solstice in the Southern Hemisphere. At any rate, it is a beautiful spiritual paradigm that anyone can participate in. It is earth magic as well as cosmological magic. So check it out. And oh, yes, and also, I almost forgot, I have a free guide for you that you can grab that actually has all of the 2026 Sabbats and Esbats, all of the Wheel of the Year ceremonies, like Imbolc and Ostara and Mabon and all of the, and also the lunar celebrations, the full moon and new moon celebrations, with their specific frequencies of that time, like whether it's the wolf moon or the pink moon, the actual dates for 2026. So it's really beautiful, and it's a great little handy guide. So it's free. Just check it out, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's talk about the calendar that we all are using, that global calendar that we all have accepted. It is the Gregorian calendar, and it is a structure without any natural rhythm, without any real spiritual rhythm. In fact, it's a calendar that is basically dead. Sorry to be a little bit morose, but that is actually, I connected with Akashic Council of Light about this, and they were telling me, well, as I channeled them, they were saying that the structure that we use and is, if you think about it, how we tend to use it on a grid, either, digital grid or the one that we put on the refrigerator, the paper one, we see it as this, it's like this really like structure that doesn't have any life to it. And it isn't connected to any true life. It isn't connected to nature. It isn't connected to the stars. It is just really just out there in a way that doesn't align with anything that would be natural for us. It was formed in, it was 1500s. It's the late 16th century. Maybe it was like 1580s. It was created by Pope Gregory. It was a religious standardization, and it was intended for administrative consistency. So think taxes. And also, it was just a way to make some predictability. And it really is very linear and uniform and abstracted, as opposed to being organic or connected to us. It is holding us in a way kind of, to me, like as a prisoner of just linear time. And it is prioritizing output. It is prioritizing production. And I'm saying, like production isn't necessarily a bad word, but in the way that if it's coming out of a lifeless authority to give us this pressure to perform or to behave in a certain way, like January 1st, when in the Northern Hemisphere, it's cold, it's quiet, and we have the pressure to make resolutions, and we are trying to figure out our taxes because, it's going to be tax time pretty soon, all of that kind of stuff. So this is a calendar that assumes just uniformity, sameness, and life never does that. Life and nature and the cosmos, while the planets and the moon and the stars are moving in their synchrony, synchrony is not the same as predictability. And this calendar that we have been using is it is lifeless. Now, it's a way for us to communicate with one another. I'm only speaking to the aspects of it that, are heavy and dense. Of course, we can still use it. I'm not like saying, oh, let's just chuck it out. I don't see a way to do that. It's fine if you feel some renewal at any time. It's fine if you feel renewal on the winter solstice when it's very cold and dark and it's at the darkest time of the year. So I'm definitely not saying to move even against something that might be working for you with this. And by the way, it is working for us in some ways because now we know how to find a time to meet together. But at the same time, I would encourage us, as I do, to work with more organic calendars in a way that we are moving our life. Lunar calendars. I talked about the Pagan Wheel of the Year. And actually, before this Gregorian calendar, the standardized calendar, was implemented. I mean, it actually took the world a long time to accept it. And there are other more organic calendars all throughout different cultures. I've just only been speaking about the Pagan Wheel of the Year because that, again, is my spiritual practice and it's also my ancestry. But there are Chinese calendars, there are Jewish calendars, there are calendars across all cultures that predate the Gregorian calendar and are much more oriented to nature and the cosmos. And that is just more appropriate for human beings. So, of course, we all have to still use the Gregorian calendar. And my message here is to also find a way to connect with natural rhythm, your personal natural rhythm, and also the greater rhythms of the earth, the sun, the moon, and the cosmos, because ritual restores rhythm. So if you have any kind of a personal or a practice that you bring to a space of a community, whether it is for the lunar ceremonies, which in my community, we call those the ceremonies of the certified lunatics, or if it is the ceremonies of the sun, or, even just celebrating your own personal birthday. is really important and significant because that's your solar return. You can also look at the other returns in your natal chart. And those personal ceremonies are really valuable. And then, of course, finding a collective organic calendar that you can celebrate, that you can devote yourself to spiritually. It will make a big difference. Rather than having that Gregorian calendar, which is quite unalive, rule our lives and compel us to follow a linear path, a grid that is lifeless. Yes, that's a part of our life, but we can then add life to our life with the things that are more organic and cosmically relevant. So, wrapping up this segment here about the Gregorian calendar, let's just recognize that uniformity of time, that linearity of time, it benefits systems, it benefits hierarchies, it benefits an external authority. It doesn't benefit soul growth or soul movement or life organically becoming. Okay, so that's what I have for you in this episode. And just stay tuned for the next one because I'm going to be doing a little divination, a little tapping into the specific energies of the time. And in the divination, we're going to see what energies are unfolding, what we're anchoring in right now, and what is becoming, and how we can make the most of it and feel our most empowered and expressive, creative, intuitive, spiritual, and human selves, anchoring in compassion and also celebrating ourselves. Because I want to say, as I usually do, thank you for shining your light on this beautiful world. And thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.